myself with my parents, the questions I'll ask are just going to be sort of basic, like, how did you find out about Bethel? In your mind, why did you send your son there? How did you sort of figure out what was going on, and then just sort of let you tell your story of all the stuff that happened afterwards? I think the fact that you figured out what was going on and then went to bat for all these boys is a huge part of, we've never talked to a parent yet that has done that. I'm sure there's other parents out there that have done something similar. So that's, I think, is pretty cool about your story.
Absolutely.
Kind of unique and stuff like that.
We felt like we had to save as many as I could.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess just sort of tell me how you found out about Bethel, sort of what the family situation was, where you were looking to send a spot to your son, and sort of what your impressions were of it.
Well, my son had started running away, using drugs. What drugs? I don't know. And of course, we tried everything in the book, and I was a stay-at-home mom. And I literally could tell him to clean his room. He'd go up to his room, hop out his window, and off he would go. He wasn't going to clean his room. So we were feeling like we needed to save him from himself. And my husband started finding, searching online, and the companies that pay the most end up at the top of the search engines. And they're agencies that get paid to send, for referrals. So it's not even like we talked to Bethel directly in the beginning. It was this referral agency, and they were going to do everything under the sun. And my son was going to become a new guy. And then they got us in touch with Bethel, and Bethel promoted itself as a religious, boys camp. And, we had visions. They showed pictures of fishing and basketball and horse riding, swimming. And we had pictures of him sitting around the campfire singing Kumbaya, And so they really do a hard sell like that. Nothing about abuse, and they live out in the middle of nowhere. This camp is, so even if your boy is a runaway risk, they have, the drill sergeants stay up all night to make sure their safety, and sounded good. They got all the education. They would get them caught up if they were behind, when in reality, it was like they would be handed a notebook for maybe an hour a day, and that was it. That was the level of schooling. But my husband then made a plan to take my son down there, and he went with his brother, my husband's brother, the uncle. They drove down there. They, met with the fountains. They toured the place. Here's the church. He'll have Bible study every night. When in reality, you are forced to memorize Bible studies. And if you don't have them all, you get slugged in the stomach for every verse you don't have memorized. So it's all under abuse tactics. So they walked around for hours, and they were pleased with what they seen. And so then they left him. And while my husband was gone, of course, it was a couple of days trip driving down there. I started just getting nervous like a mom, and I started doing everything like Googling Bethel, and I started finding boys that had been there who were now posting on these sites saying, oh my God, I was abusive. I was abused. I escaped. I hid in the cornfields, and ate corn and whatever they could find to eat, because they were tortured there. And of course, I was heartsick finding this stuff. There was no reason for these anonymous people to be posting. So I did try to contact some of them, and I did hear from a few of them that absolutely. Well, then I started calling down to Mississippi. I called the Attorney General's office. I called the Sheriff's office. I called Child Protective Services. I called every agency down there. And within 2 hours, the Attorney General's office, the assistant, Sue Perry, called me back and told me to get my son out of there. And she said the kids are abused, they're forced to drink urine. There's no way for them to tell their parents. And that got me going, you know. And so I called my husband on his cell phone and I said, you know, you got to get him out of there. Oh, stop. You know, we just dropped him off and, you know, we're almost home. We'll be home in a day. I said, no. So I gave him the telephone numbers of Sue Perry at the Attorney General's office. I mean, and she was almost as high as you could go. The next in line was Michael Moore, who was the Attorney General from Mississippi.
Yeah.
And they reiterated to my husband that absolutely it was true. Just get him out of there. So my husband got back home. We tried to find flights to get back there, no flights. So we started driving. The next morning we got up and started driving back down there, which was 3 days. So my son had been there 3 days when we
Yeah.
showed back up.
I just want to ask you a little question because I think that's a really good point. That you started looking online and everything like that. And I think a lot of parents don't do their due diligence. So just sort of go into a little bit of detail, like how did you start looking? How did you end up finding the Attorney General? Like, why did you think that the Attorney General would know? Just so if somebody's watching it, they can kind of see, like, if you're considering one of these places, maybe do a little more research.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You need to hear from the people that were there firsthand or the parents that witnessed stuff firsthand, you know. Just taking the agency or the referral company's word for it, you just needed to start. I mean, and Google is huge now. You can Google any program and you got to go way down the list because whoever posts something about it is not going to get money. They're just posting to try to warn you. And that's what I found. And I still remember his name was Shane. That was the first one. And I literally contacted that guy and I don't mean to be a pest, but I just found that on you and can you tell me more? And he did email me back. So you need to do your due diligence, talk to people who were really there. Because if you talk to the people that Bethel gives you, they're all parents that swear by it. Their son's a changed person, but like you said, even when those kids try to tell their parent what happened, the parent isn't going to believe it because the Fountains have already told them that they were lying, that they were thieves, they were fighting at the school, everything to reiterate to the parent he's in the right place because you're right, your kid is going down to hell, you know. So then they play on the parents' fears. So when the son comes out and says that, they're, yeah, I know, we talked to the Fountains and you were kind of a troublemaker. And so then they don't want to believe their child. You got to talk to those children and the parents who really listen to their kids. They were posting.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good idea. And that's one thing we're doing. We're working on we have a nonprofit that we founded and we're creating actually a website. And eventually our goal is to be able to have resources, not to be an accreditation agency, but to do sort of like a due diligence research into these places and say, okay, as a last resort,
Yes.
you know, we've looked into these places. We haven't, you know, you still want to do your due diligence, but these are maybe some places we recommend. Your story, just real quick, about your son was exactly like me. I was a runaway. I'd ran away from my home twice. One of my parents' friends hid me in their basement when my mom and law enforcement came looking for me.
Yes.
I was doing drugs. Every time my mom told me to go clean the room, I had a window that would get me outside. And if I didn't want it every night, I'd just run off. I'd come back in a couple days and would sort of come here and there. So in my situation, I mean, there's some kids like Alan that was 10 that he was sent there, and I can't imagine what a 10-year-old could ever do to get sent there. But
Yes.
in my situation, something had to be done. You know, I have 3 kids now. My oldest is 17. And I just know if I was ever in that situation, something would have to be done. A lot of my friends, when I was skipping school and was growing up like that, I went to a funeral last year. It seems like every year I go to a funeral, one of my friends are overdosing on heroin or dying in a car accident drinking or something stupid like that. So I really feel that something had to be done with me. if my parents maybe would have done a little more due diligence, I think it could have been a lot greater for me, and not like the schooling you said was huge. Came back as a junior in freshman classes and dropped out of high school within 2 weeks.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I went back into drugs. I went, the whole thing that it was supposed to do and help me, it really just took a year away from my life. And then continued down that path again. And luckily I got out of it. But
Yep.
a lot of these guys I asked, well, what do you think you could have been if you wouldn't have gone? And they're like, oh man, I don't know. I had so much potential. I'm, so good at this. I'm so good at that. So I think it's really important that parents
Well,
realize.
and I like to reiterate that when the parent takes over and sends their kid away for a fee, the parent has become the judge, the jury, and the prosecutor. That's too much. When my son got back, because he was only there 3.5 days, he still continued, like you said, but we let the law, the system help us. So you're right. He ended up having to go to juvenile, and we could visit him twice a week and phone calls every day. But we didn't need to be the judge, the jury, and the prosecutor and decide his sentence. Well, you're going to stay away for 2 years, 3 years. That's unfair. No child deserves a parent to be able to become all of those things.
Yeah, that's a good point. My parents were so scared too that I would get in the jail system and, just get into more trouble, and like, I'm religious myself. I'm a Christian, and at the time I was not. And my parents, that was a huge thing for them, was finding some sort of religious. It was huge for them.
Us too. Absolutely.
They turned
But
down a lot of other places out there and other options, like, well, at least he's going to go to a Christian place,
yes.
So yeah, I
And
think that,
Bible study every day,
yeah,
church twice a week.
yeah, and hold hands and sing
Yes.
Kumbaya.
Yes.
Yeah.
I bought it hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah. That's a really good, I like that thing you just said about the parent shouldn't be the judge, jury, and executioner.
No,
That's a
they
powerful
should
statement.
not. And we were so afraid of, like you said, the judicial system. And once we got home, that's exactly where we needed to turn to our judicial system with all kinds of things in place, to not have abuse. And yeah, we were completely satisfied with it. And my son had an attorney to work for him, and we worked with the judge. We worked directly with the judge. He's on our side. We don't want him shipped away forever. But if he does a crime, which is running around unsupervised, and you pay.
Yeah, that's a
Not
good
for
point.
your life though.
Yeah. The place did so much damage. So I'll let you. I think you said that you guys couldn't find any flights anywhere, and then you guys got an address. So I'll let you just sort of continue on that story. Sorry to interrupt, but I think that was a important part to just sort of hear your perspective on about searching and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And we showed up, John Fountain unannounced, so John Fountain comes out, and oh yeah, he's been doing really great. I mean, so we're getting the spiel from John Fountain. Um, my husband, it took him 2 hours to get our son ready for us to see him, and his face was bruised. They shave your head and deliberately cut and nick your skin, as a form of torture. So my son had a bruised face. He had cuts all over his head. He had bruises in his rib cage where you could see that it was knuckle marks. So he didn't say a word. He got into the car, we started driving, and after we were about 10 miles down the road, he let it oh my God, that place. And we didn't say nothing. We didn't say that we had heard from Sue Perry, the Attorney General's office. We also heard from a lady named Patty, and it's been, I used to have all these names in my mind. Patty was with CPS, DHS. And Patty also had told us to get our son out of there. And so we didn't tell our son any of that. We wanted to just hear what he had to say. And boy, when he felt safe enough that we were far enough away, he had a lot to say. And he was beaten by the drill instructors the minute we left, my husband left the property. He was taken into a room, told to change into these clothes. They shaved his head and they beat him. It was the only barracks or whatever where there was no cameras, because that's something also, the Fountains, we have cameras everywhere. Well, not where the beatings go on. And that's why he was bruised. So from there, we went to Jacksonville, and where the Attorney General's office was, and took him to the hospital to have all of the abuse documented, the bruises taken pictures of, everything. And we wanted a formal statement backed up by a physician. And then we got a hold of the Attorney General's office. And the next day, I believe it was, we met with the Attorney General's office, and gave a statement to them also. My son, because he had 2 hours notice, everybody started scrambling, get me out of here too, get me out of here. One boy had hidden a pencil, so he was able to write down his telephone number and said, please, have your parents call my parents. Another boy had his retainer case, the plastic case that your retainer, and it had a sticker on it with his name and telephone number and address. If lost, call. And another boy had a label in the back of his Bible, and he ripped that out and gave it to my son. So while we were in Jacksonville, we called those 3 parents to tell them what was going on and to tell them to rescue their children. And within a matter of a couple of days, those 3 boys were rescued. Same stories. So then we had a big meeting at the Attorney General's office once those parents got to town and rescued their boys too. Attorney General Sue Perry was there, DHS was there, Child Protective Services was there. We had a lot of agencies in that room, and all of us and the kids had a chance to talk and tell them what was going on. And they assured us that they were gonna, get in there and investigate. And within the month, the CPS went in there and rescued another 13 boys that had visible signs of abuse. They were able to remove them. But we still had some parents, because I started going down the list. I had notebooks. I was calling every parent that I had a phone number to tell them what was going on. And I had one mom that said, no, I've been down there to see my son, and we were on the property and we got to eat lunch with him. And, it really is a good place. And I told her, I said, you have to get down there and get your son off the property. They're too afraid to speak. If you sat on that property and he knew he was going to be left there, he was not going to say a word. So she did head back down there, took him off, got permission to take him to McDonald's. And when he got to McDonald's, it came out, and she never took him back. So she was another one that by the time we had rescued as many as we could, I have found an attorney that was going to take our case, and we were going to file a civil lawsuit against that place. And we had, I believe it was 39 people on that case by the time I got done.
Oh, that's really cool.
I couldn't stop. There was parents out there that really didn't know, just like me.
Yeah, that's really cool. I wish more parents would fight like that.
Absolutely. They hurt my boy, that's not help. If I could have locked him up with a chain and put him in the basement and beat him every time, wouldn't we all do that? It's free. And as it was, do you know, we had paid with a $25,000 cashier's check. And because we showed up unannounced, we had already put a stop payment on that check. It was Mother's Day weekend. So of course it was kind of a holiday and they hadn't cashed it. So we got all of our money back. Others, not so lucky. They kept their money and, sue me to get it back.
Yeah, yeah. Good thing you did that. Yeah. So then what happened after you, I think you just said that you guys did the whole meeting with the Attorney General. Was there a case filed or what happened from there?
Well, they assured us there was, but as the time went on, that's when we started seeing the corruption. There was, out of the 13 boys that the state went in and rescued due to visible, signs of abuse, 4 of them was taken, or maybe 5 was taken to the Loosedale Hospital. So as we started getting this lawsuit, those parents contacted the Loosedale Hospital for records, their records to show the abuse. One had stitches put in his chin. Poof, they were gone. No hospital records existed. No proof that they were even there. Now, furthering our investigation, one of Bethel's board of directors is one of the highest people at the Loosedale Hospital. It interweaves, and that's how medical records just disappeared. I mean, come on, with HIPAA, that just can't happen now. It can down in that town.
Yeah,
Police department.
I was taken to the hospital one time because I got really sick and a bad infection, like my lymph nodes and stuff like that. And they checked me in and they brought me down a hallway to the end of the hallway where there's like the janitor's door and stuff like that. Put a little chair for me and just let me sit there at the end of the hallway. And I kept watching the doctors go back and forth and do all their stuff. Finally, somebody ran over real quick, started doing tests on me and things like that. They went over, talked to Brother Fountain directly and left. He said, "Get up, boy, it's time to go." I mean,
Yes.
they didn't check me in. There was literally no record that I was ever even there.
No records. Poof. The same with the district attorney, and I used to have his name. Um, there was 15 of us that went down there probably 5 months later to go before the grand jury to submit our own evidence because the state wasn't doing anything. So we all, our money to drive there, hotels, we met before the attorney, this grand jury, and we submitted evidence, pictures. We're having to do the legal work, and went before a grand jury and nothing happened. There wasn't enough evidence. Well, the district attorney is best friends with Fountains. Cookouts, barbecues, another corrupt piece of the puzzle. So of course we weren't going to get, but it was like as time went on, we were finding out how corrupt the system was and how much the Bethels, the Fountains, were able to pay off high officials. That's why the police department, because I couldn't get anything out of them, they're paid off that if they see any of the Bethel kids running away, escaping, to immediately bring them back to Bethel and not even contact the parents. That's a crime. You pick up a minor and you don't call the parents? They don't. Now, you can't tell me that's legal, but it happens all the time down there. So another facet of the corruption.
Yeah, these places look for these tiny little towns too, because they bring a
Absolutely.
lot of money. They become leaders in the community, and they do the same thing to the community that they do to our parents. These are bad
Absolutely.
kids. They're fighters. If they run away, it's because they got in trouble. It's this, it's that. If they're bruised, it's because they're fighting each other. Yeah.
I continued to call the newspaper down there anytime I heard of anything. They were going to do a raid. I had rescued one more kid out of there because by then I started up a Yahoo group called Bethel Boys Academy Abuse and Torture. And within 1 month, I had 75 members. And it was a closed group. You had to get my permission to join, but that's how parents were now finding me. And I advocated for these boys I had never even met. So yes, it went on and on that way, but we were getting nowhere other than, like but as people were getting rescued, I mean, one had to be hospitalized immediately because of severe dehydration. Most of the boys that got rescued based on my Yahoo group had horrible staph infections, which, you know, we know staph infections left untreated can kill you. But so I was able to rescue a lot more just from that Yahoo group. Parents and prior students were finding me.
What year was that all this happened?
2005.
2005. I think they must have got shut down right after that then.
It did
Yeah,
because I was relentless.
yeah. You get those many kids, you get together to work those many kids and those many parents, eventually they can't ignore it. The voice
And they
becomes
kept
too
trying
loud.
to change the name because of my website, you know, that I had made. So then they tried to change it to Eagle Point, and then they tried one more time to change it to some other name, but I was relentless. In my group, then I would add now known as. So, and they were still using the same Bethel Boys blankets, logo, but they just thought they could get away from my group, and I was relentless. The minute I would hear it changed, I would add that name in my search engine so that parents could find me.
Yeah,
And
that's
you're
great.
right, eventually they had to close down because parents were coming in groves getting their kids out. Even parents I never got to hear from, they were reading that stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
Worked for me.
yeah. That's awesome. That's a definite success story. That's very unique.
Absolutely.
Very unique. If more parents would do that, I think a lot of these places would have stopped sooner. Like that place Agape in Missouri we go to, they're still open, and Alan went there 25 years ago. You know, I think it just sort of takes people standing up to get them shut down.
Absolutely. And to not ever let down.
Yeah, no, that's really good. So, um, I guess if you just, is there anything you just want to say or anything like to sum anything up, or what, is there anything else you want to say?
You know what? I just believe that most parents are like me out there. They, when they do become the judge, the jury, and the prosecutor, they do feel like they have their child's best interest at heart. And in reality, you know, these places are not what they seem. You should never ship your kid away. There's places and resources you can help them right there in your town, but you got to quit being afraid. And you know, and the Bethels had that girls camp. Bethel Academy girls were all, and the girl, I went after them too. And pretty soon I was finding girls willing to speak out that, you know, had to eat their own vomit, and that got shut down first. So that was an easier one. But, you know, the times I would put Bethel in the papers, here would come John. These aren't choir boys we're talking about. They're murderers, rapists, arsonists. Not so. They're just like you, what you said, running away, probably messing in drugs. You weren't burning down houses. You weren't raping nuns. Um, most of the boys were there. I met one boy, his parents, they're from Mississippi even, lived 4 hours away from Lucidale. And because it was very still prejudiced down there and racist down there, this boy suddenly got a black girlfriend, and the parents were livid. You know, racism is alive and well, and down in the South Mississippi still. And they sent Daryl away because of that. That was his crime. I mean, absurd. I can't even wrap my head around that. And Daryl was a very nice young man. I got to meet him. That was your crime. Keep your kids at home and let the judicial system work for you. I guess that's really what I would love to emphasize for parents. It's not as scary as you think, but you start shipping your kid away, you'll never really know who's on the other end listening.